Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of USA Global TV and Radio. The content presented is for informational purposes only and is intended to foster open discussion and debate. Viewer discretion is advised. USA Global TV and Radio does not endorse any particular viewpoint and encourages viewers to seek out additional information and perspectives. Saving America with Dr. David D. Schein.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. To say the last week has been explosive, it might be a dramatic understatement. Israel does the work for civilization against Iran, and now, with a little help from its big friend, the USA. A little over 2 months ago, Trump gave Iran 60 days to reach a deal to trade prosperity and acceptance for its nuclear program. After a handful of meetings, it was obvious that Iran was delaying until they had finalized their nuclear weapons. On the 61st day, Israel acted on behalf of the rest of the world and did a strategic bombing that took out most of Iran's military leaders, as well as an amazing list of key military sites. This was possible since months ago, Israel engaged in a targeted bombing that did devastating damage to Iran's air defense systems. I note the parallel to World War II. About 2 years into the USA's involvement in Europe, Germany's air defenses had largely been destroyed. From there, it was a cleanup operation that still took another 18 months. This was due to the failure of the US and England to stop Hitler in the late 1930s, so the Nazis were very entrenched. It took a lot of armaments and innumerable human lives to end their occupation of Europe. But ending their air defenses parallel to Israel's approach to Iran was a big first step. Iran's population, some estimate over 80%, oppose their terrorist government that increasingly oppresses its own people. I believe this was key to the incredible attack on night one that took out so many military leaders and nuclear scientists. This does not happen without many eyes on the ground. In turn, Israel has done all it can to avoid civilian casualties. Israel calls its campaign against Iran Rising Lion, drawing a verse from the book of Numbers in the Bible that foretells the success of the Jewish people. In contrast, the terrorists have launched wave after wave of missiles at Israel's population centers. In addition to property damage, sadly, there has been loss of lives. These cowards, like all terrorists, don't go after military sites. They go after civilians and hospitals. This is parallel to the terrorist Putin going after the civilians in Ukraine. And I wonder how many lives will be lost before the Russians rise up against that murderer. My favorite video so far of the Iran-Israel conflict was the live broadcast by Iran State TV when a bomb hits the broadcast building and you can see the on-screen person running away. Word is that the terrorist Ayatollah may be seeking political asylum in Russia. Hey, that seems somehow appropriate, doesn't it? As Netanyahu explained, I want to assure the civilized world we will not let the world's most dangerous regime get the world's most dangerous weapon. Iran plans to give those weapons, nuclear weapons, to its terrorist proxies. That would make a nightmare of nuclear terrorism all too real. And he continued, the increasing range of Iran's ballistic missiles would bring that nuclear nightmare to the cities of Europe and eventually to America. Here's my global observation on the situation. This documents the massive failure that is called the United Nations. If the UN was going to do its job, Iran would not have fallen to a terrorist regime, and Russia would not have occupied Crimea in Ukraine. Why is a single country, along with U.S. support, Israel, doing the work of so many civilized countries? This now includes a number of Iran's neighboring countries helping Israel intercept the missile barrage from Iran. While never a Trumpster, I do like the fact that he said he would decide in the next 2 weeks if the USA was going to get involved. That is because Israel needed the heavy bombing required to take out Iran's deep nuclear development sites. Well, in a surprise move, that happened Saturday night. The USA did what only it could do and sent the big bombers over with the bunker busters. Reports are not a single person on the U.S. side was hurt, and all 3 critical targets were destroyed. Now, some of the morons called Dems have complained that there was no formal declaration of war by Congress. Well, tough. In order to safeguard our military members, it had to be a surprise. With the anti-American losers who are sympathetic to the wrong side here, no way the operation could have been leaked to this Congress. I have a little message for the Ayatollah and his shrinking band of supporters. In John Donne's famed poem, the final line is, "Therefore, send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." Last I heard, Iran requested new peace talks, but I do not think anyone takes them seriously. The question is whether regime change is on the table. I certainly hope so. Over the years, I've had a good fortune to interact with many Iranians. I found them to be rational and articulate people. I believe the statistic is that as many as 80% favor returning to a more normal country and not a terrorist outpost. So I say to the people of Iran, Americans, us, support you. The best way to peace and prosperity is for you and your country is to Mussolini the Ayatollahs and take control of your country. If you're too young to know what that means, look up the last days of the Italian dictator from World War II. Obviously, the military is without many key leaders due to the precision bombings. I expect that many in the military, especially the lower ranks, and also support the people of Iran. If they are young and smart, they do not want to be killed along with the supporters of terrorism. Therefore, it is that time in your history to regain control of your country, and hopefully many in the so-called Revolutionary Guard will join you and stop oppressing you. Sad story of domestic terrorism. By now, everyone has heard of the tragic story from Minnesota of 2 assassinated and 2 shot by a crazed appointee of Governor Walz. I believe the man's wife has been taken in for questioning as well. The shooter disguised himself as a police officer and made his car look like one. In the car, he had many powerful weapons, which fortunately, since he got separated from the car, he was not able to use. The local police realized the situation, and the shooter somehow escaped, but was apprehended a couple days later. Leaving the car behind, a manifesto was discovered and a list of targets in addition to the cache of weapons. This was a politically motivated campaign. Most of the slopstream media have been quiet about it, but this was someone who was a Democrat and appears to have attacked other Democrats for not being as far left as he was. The good news is that the feds have him in custody, which means the death penalty is on the table. In the meantime, 2 other Democrat politicians have decided to get attention and violate the rules of a civilized society. An unknown California senator, Alex Padilla, charged into a Christie Nome press conference without a suit or his congressional pin and ran toward her. Fortunately, guards intercepted him and cuffed him. I would like to see him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. How does this differ from J6, folks? Then a remote candidate for New York City Mayor Brad Lander decided to physically interfere in the arrest of an illegal at the courthouse after the person was in the custody of ICE. He was also cuffed and arrested. I call for prison time to make the point that it is that era when it's time to respect the law. How can we get civilians to behave when the elected officials are part of the problem? The sad thing is that the whole society has moved into this wave of violence. In Houston, incidents called road rage have erupted. This is so bad that the police are running focus operations to intercept some of the bad actors and calm it down. When I moved to Houston many years ago, there were road signs all around that said drive friendly. Hey, Time to bring some of those signs back. Trump seems to have had an impact on the G7 since the focus was definitely real business issues and not this climate change hoax and gender issues from the recent past. The G7 threw out Russia a few years ago, as was previously the G8. It is presently comprised of the United States, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. Reportedly, Trump volunteered that Russia should not have been thrown out. I disagree. I'm glad that this deranged murderer is not being included. This year's meeting was hosted by Mark Carney, the new PM of Canada. He and Trump seem to get along okay. The reported focus was on energy security, artificial intelligence, critical mineral supply chains, and global economic stability. Trump left early to return to D.C. due to the Israel-Iran conflict. The accused criminal and reported gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the illegal alien deported to his native El Salvador earlier this year, has been brought back to the United States as a result of court rulings. So the taxpayers wasted more money on this garbage who should have stayed in his home country. This is the illegal who clowns like Senator Chris Van Hollen went to visit with your taxpayer money. Don't forget that next time he runs for re-election. On the good news side, Abrego Garcia is not out running around. The Justice Department met him with an indictment for human trafficking, which includes 2 felony counts. They have video evidence. I hope he will do a long stint in a high-security prison and then be deported back to El Salvador. He should never be free again to roam the streets of this country and commit crimes. Here is some quick background information on these 2 great guests. Dennis Beaver is well known as a syndicated columnist for the Kiplinger newsletter and other publications. He is a successful attorney. He looks forward to helping others and does not charge readers who ask for his legal guidance, generally on consumer matters. He speaks French and Swedish fluently, and his English is pretty good too. His wife of 48 years, Anne, helps him run his law practice and has assisted him with a serious bout with cancer. Lyle Sussman is an emeritus professor at the University of Louisville. He is the former of the Management and Entrepreneurship Department. He is a best-selling author with 1 million copies of his books out in 15 languages. Lyle and his wife, Susie, have been married for 54 years, and she is also an accomplished professional. I have had the good fortune to meet both of these gentlemen and their wives in person. The bios of both of these accomplished gentlemen are much, much longer, but hey, we need to leave time for our discussion. Dennis, please get us started today. Tell us about your recent experience when getting contacted about an important follow-up meeting with your doctor regarding your cancer surgery.
Yeah, a little history. I had bladder cancer, and in six years ago, I had my bladder removed, right kidney, prostate. We couldn't find our car keys, and our Chihuahua vanished. Nobody told me, but they told my wife I had about a year to live. It's interesting. Had I been told that, would I have been the willing accomplice of the self-fulfilling prophecy? Who knows? But Anne replied to the surgeon, "You don't know, Beeve." And it has been 6 years. I was stage 4. It was in my liver. And my oncologist refers to me as his miracle patient because I had the most aggressive form of bladder cancer with about a 2% survival chance. So every 4 to 5 months or so, I get PET scans and CAT scans. So all of a sudden, I don't get any phone calls. And suddenly a letter arrives at home. No phone calls, no nothing. We have voicemail, answering machines, you name it. Our telephones at home and at the office record all the numbers, shows who called or the number. So call and hang up, but still a number registers. Nothing since May. And a letter arrives at home. Poorly written. The English was not good. Dear Hart, my actual legal name is Hartley Dennis Beaver. So it was Dear Hartley. We tried to reach you several times and please call. The envelope in which this letter came was handwritten poorly, wasn't aligned, so nothing. What you would assume they would know how to. Pardon my voice. We have wildfires around town here. You'd think they would know how to use the computer to print an envelope. No way. So I phoned the person. Her name is Bada, initial L, no last name. I talked to her. Said, why didn't I get a phone call? Oh, I called you. I tried calling. When did you try calling? She gives me dates. We never got a call. Never got a call at home or at the office or on my cell phone. You have all these numbers. Oh, I'm telling you, I tried. Yeah. How about an email? Oh, we don't do that. We don't do that. Right. Now, it's important to be on top of cancer, right? It could come back. Probably not. It's probably cured. Hopefully. But the incompetence of this was absolutely stunning. So what is hell going on with this country? Why can't high school graduates write, have a sense of language, grammar? That's what led to my writing both of you and expressing my frustration.
You you brought up two major issues. You bring up the issue of competence, and then you raise the question, what's happening in this country? Well, let's assume that the person who said they reached out to you, but in fact did not, was about 25 years old. That means they were born about you're born about 1999 or 2000. They were raised with a cell phone in their hand. They were raised in a milieu, in an environment where they simply had to press an icon and they had answers to their questions. They were raised in an environment where pressing an icon would tell them whether or not their grammar was correct, whether or not spell check were correct. That is, they came to believe that was a help, when in fact it was a horrible, horrible hindrance. It prevented them from learning exactly the kind of skills that you're highlighting. Skills about relating to a reader, relating to a listener, skills about understanding the situation. And in fact, your scenario is not only about communication skills, it's also about understanding the severity of the message. You were a patient that needed valuable information and you weren't getting it. So regardless of the fluency of the message, you weren't getting the essence of the message. It was not only English malpractice. I see it as almost medical malpractice.
Yeah.
Well, it is a real challenge in the United States today. As a professor, I have been shocked, especially with my younger students, the first or second year students. They do not appear to have really had the type of structured education that I had growing up, and that I think both of you did. And one of the things that I think is very much missing is I have begun assigning short research papers some of my classes. I've got students who have been admitted to this private college who have never done a research paper through high school and do not know how to do footnotes or endnotes, do not know how to reference stuff from the library and stuff like that. But I am hearing from some of my fellow professors, and particularly a finance professor, by the way, Lyle, that he just assumes that they know nothing. I mean, starts from zero, which means that the courses at the college level, if you assume that, you're teaching a college course that's half of the course is going to be a high school remedial course in math and statistics and things like that many of us had in our first year of college, but were set up for it by having good math skills and things leaving high school. So I am concerned, and I know in some of the schools today they're talking about taking the cell phones away as a way of getting the students to focus in the classroom, because distraction is a big issue too.
I haven't experienced. You two, I think, will enjoy. I taught leadership and communication in a master's accounting class. So these were MBA students who were getting a master's in accounting. So they come in with a very, very strong quantitative background. They can multiply 2-digit numbers in their head and they'd get them right. And the first meeting we had, I said, okay, you're all going to give an impromptu speech. And I thought the class was going to have a fit. I thought they were going to call 911. I said, all I want you to do is talk to your colleagues about some certain issues related to accounting. And to a person, they said, but we don't have our PowerPoint in front of us. How can we do that? That's what they said. How can we talk without our PowerPoint in front of us? And I said, well, I want you to know generations of MBA students did it before you, and you will do it in my class. Knowing something is one thing. Being able to communicate what you know is very, very different. And if you want to succeed in society, you have to go beyond knowing something. You have to communicate what you know in a way that people will see it as knowledgeable and respectful and as meeting their needs. Dennis, let me ask you a question about your case. At any time, did the agency or that person ever apologize for creating the frustration they created?
No, and in fact, I even sent an email to one of the executives there. Very, very nice lady. I left her a voicemail. Here's what happened. This does not make me happy. Then I sent her an email, kind of summarizing that I've not heard back from anyone, and it is a superb facility. And in fact, the one of the head physicians there, when he first came to Bakersfield years ago, I had a talk show, a Saturday morning radio talk show. I had him on twice on a first-name relationship basis, and great guy, had great treatment. The guy saved my life. And I told in the email, I said, I am here today because you were there for me yesterday. That was my closing line in the email.
You know, when we talk about communication, there's an assumption that it's about grammar and syntax and spelling and word choice and vocabulary. And obviously it is about that. But one level above that, which is what really differentiates those who succeed versus those who don't, is understanding context, understanding the situation, understanding the person who's going to be reading the message or listening to the message. And what I'm hearing and seeing from my colleagues at the university and what I'm reading in the relevant papers, there's a huge deficiency, not just in the basics of grammar and syntax and spelling and vocabulary, but in the nuances of understanding context. The scenario you presented, Dennis, is the combination of pure grammar and foundation principles, but also context, the situation. And what's compounding the problem, back to your question, Dennis, about what's happening in our world and of competency, what's compounding the problem is the introduction of artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and the other software packages where a student can simply say, write me an essay on topic X, and they press the button and out comes a 10, 15-page report on X, and they turn it in. Exactly. David, you are still a professor. I retired 6 years ago, but I am hearing horror stories about students turning in papers that they didn't even write.
I am very concerned about it. And one of the solutions, papers that I mentioned earlier, are personal. In other words, the question is on business ethics, and it is, what is the basis for your personal ethical guidelines And where did that come from? Out of, say, 8 papers, I will get at least 20 of those papers will come in, and I will read them and send them back to the student and say, this paper does not even fit the assignment. Now, I don't know if that's because they tried to use AI. AI is still pretty new. It's not readily available to everybody. It's out, but it's not totally available. So I think it will be an increasing problem in the future. In fact, I've also begun to build into my syllabi that use of AI is not permitted for school assignments. And we're going to fine tune that, because they can use AI in an in-depth research paper. If you wanted to get started on a topic, you could say, hey, AI, tell me a little bit about topic X. That's legitimate. That's a fair use. But then they still have to go and do the homework. So separating the starter point using AI from what we want them to do as researchers, that's going to be indeed a growing challenge as we go forward, because AI is all around us and it's come very fast.
Dennis, your case, I keep coming back to your case. What's happening in the medical system right now is algorithms are driving many decisions, administrative decisions and medical decisions. And once an issue came up in your case and an algorithm couldn't solve, the human being who was charged with solving it couldn't solve the problem. And not only could that person not solve the problem, she made the problem worse.
This young lady who contacted me, she's a gatekeeper. And sometimes the lowest level person in an organization is critically important, in this case, to patients and to the image the organization radiates to the world.
Well, the question becomes, how do we get, and where is the focus that needs to be? And I have been arguing that we need a big focus on K-12, on the basics. And, I get a little concerned, and I've said this in my social media, that we don't need to be teaching sex education to 6-year-olds. We need to be teaching English, manners, and math. And even though I'm a business school professor, I really push STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. And in fact, I'm very excited. My one of my sons is a high school teacher, and he's teaching engineering in high school to stimulate the students. It's part of their math department, to stimulate the students to think about professions in engineering. And I think that's very important, because we cannot be successful as a country without having people that are willing to do the math and the statistics and pursue that kind of stuff. And like I said, even though I'm in the business school, I strongly promote people pursuing the STEM subjects.
Not just technical skills, but social skills is the issue of grade inflation. Years ago, there was an assumption of what a 3.0 grade point meant. We can't make that assumption anymore. Matter of fact, the assumption now is that grades have been inflated by about 0.8 over the last 20 years. That a 3.5 today would be like a 2.7 10, 15, 20 years ago.
That's a very valuable point, Lyle, and I've encountered that, in that the students come to me and will have an 88 average, and then 90 is required for an A-, and they'll be, after the semester, they'll come and say, well, Dr. Schein, I really needed an A- in this course. And it's like, it's an 88, it's not a 90, and we don't do that. Now, the Vietnam War actually triggered the current wave of grade inflation. We're still suffering from that, because what happened is if Joe Blow flunked out of college, you got a 2S deferment that back in the mandatory draft, which ran through part of the Vietnam War, you got a 2S deferment. If you flunked out of college then they put a rifle in your hand, sent you to boot camp, and sent you to Vietnam. So a lot of the professors were opposed to the war in Vietnam and used their political leanings to influence what they were doing in the classroom. And as a result of that, we had tremendous grade inflation that triggered in the 70s. One of the things that I'm frustrated by is that in higher ed today, every class comes with a student faculty evaluation. For young faculty, especially your assistant professors, your associate professors, those student evals are considered in promotion to full professor. And so it gives the professors who are already, who grew up in the system of grade inflation and who are hopeful of getting good reviews from their students, even further incentive to give grades that are frankly not earned.
A few years ago, I gave a presentation, and it was called "The University of Lake Wobegon." Remember when Garrison Keillor talked about Lake Wobegon? All the women are beautiful, all the men are corrupt, and all the kids are above average.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis, I think you were dealing with an administrator who graduated from the University of Lake Wobegon, where everyone was above average.
I wish it was so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we, and this is not the three of us. I think our country, our world is now reaping the consequences of believing that everyone is above average. David, thank you for this. I think everyone viewing this has an important question to answer themselves, and that is, did I graduate from Lake Wobegon? Am I doing as well as I can? Am I performing as well as I should? Am I communicating in a way that really helps someone at the other end?
And my observation is that when some of the worst things in the world, the worst things imaginable, happen to you or family or close friends, to look at it and can you extract something beneficial, something that will help make you a better person, help others along the journey that we all follow. And Dave, thank you so much for this time.
Thank you.
It has been my pleasure. Dennis Beaver, Bakersfield, California, and Emeritus Professor Lyle Sussman from the University of Louisville. And I have been so delighted to have both of you with us on Saving America. There are plenty of dupes in order to protest. So the CCP and other commie scum and many fools duped by them decided to have a big protest on a Saturday. It was supposedly a protest against the Trump administration and to oppose ICE enforcement. Remember, the vast percentage of Americans support legal immigration and oppose wide open borders. Best I can tell, the whole deal was a bust. All it did was mess up traffic in some cities and waste millions of tax dollars for police security. Some might reply, if you care about tax dollars, why did Trump have a big army parade? Hey, I didn't support the parade, but at least it was pro-American. I would have scheduled it for the 4th of July or Memorial Day instead. While there were reports of a good number of protesters at these rallies, the reality is that they represented a tiny percentage of the population. I have work to do. Why would I run around and protest in favor of illegal immigration? And of course, Trump is no king. If he was, he would not have left the White House following the questionable 2020 election. Again, at least in California, there were reports that the violence was coordinated by paid protesters funded by anti-American organizations. Worthless Governor Gavin No Sense is complaining that the deployment of National Guard military to stop the violence in LA is an assault on democracy. If he did his job, none of this would have happened. More than one commentator has mentioned the use of federal troops to enforce admission of Black students to schools and universities during the 1950s and 1960s. There is precedent, in other words. I strongly suspect that the firebombing incident in Boulder, Colorado, and the murder of the Jewish couple in Washington, D.C. were coordinated by the same operations trying to disrupt American society. I would like to see what investigation of such sources produces. Time for a reckoning. I suspect that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, basically an attempt to bring down the American society. It's a very sad situation, folks. I don't think it'll be successful, but I am concerned. What is reported to be the world's richest shipwreck was located off the coast of Colombia. I credit iHeartRadio's newsletter for this tidbit. The San Jose, a Spanish galleon, sank in 1708 during a battle with British forces. It was carrying a treasure valued at up to $20 billion in today's dollars. The ship had gold, silver, emeralds, and other valuables from Peru. The booty was being brought back to fund the War of Spanish Succession. I had to look that up, folks. The quick story was there was a war for control of Spain from 1700 to 1714 because the Spanish king died without an heir. It ended with a possible French king accepting the throne of Spain and agreeing not to also be the king of France. In any event, the Colombian Navy, in collaboration with marine archaeologists, actually located the wreck in 2015 using underwater drones. It is at a depth of 600 meters, so the site is too deep for divers. An interesting aspect is that they identified the ship because there were gold coins from 1707 found scattered on the ocean floor. These coins bore Spanish imperial symbols, confirming the ship's identity. Of course, there's a legal battle over ownership. Colombia claims the wreck under its national heritage laws as it lies within its territorial waters. However, Spain argues that San Jose is a Spanish state property. Additionally, Sea Search Armada, an American salvage company, claims it first located the wreck in the 1980s and seeks compensation. And indigenous groups from both Peru and Bolivia also assert rights to the treasure, arguing it was originally taken from them during Spanish colonial rule. The Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague will ultimately decide the rightful owner of the shipwreck. The President of Colombia has ordered preservation of the site.
Please raise your right hand.
Business students, business persons, or consumers, business law impacts much of what you do. This segment is designed to help you get past the headlines on key stories. Federal court sets aside Department of Labor's overtime rule. In a pivotal decision for many employers, especially in retail and other lower income employment, the DOL's arbitrary increase in the minimum annual salaries required to avoid overtime for otherwise exempt from overtime employees has been struck down. In State of Texas versus United States Department of Labor, the state of Texas and a group of business organizations challenged the rule's mandates and argued that the Labor Department exceeded its authority when it finalized the final rule in April of this year. The judge ruled in favor of the state and the business organizations and against the overtime eligibility expansion. And finding that the DOL exceeded its rulemaking authority, the judge cited the Supreme Court's July 2024 decision, which overturned the longstanding Chevron deference doctrine. And we covered that in an earlier Business Law 101 episode. The judge also struck down proposed automatic increases in this minimum amount. As a result of this new decision, the minimum annual threshold to be exempt will return to $35,568 unless the DOL successfully appeals the decision. Though it raised the salary threshold in 2019 during its first term, the Trump administration is unlikely to continue pursuing the agenda of the current DOL following the inauguration. Notably, the last time DOL attempted to raise the salary threshold significantly was during the Obama administration in 2016. And in that case, the Eastern District of Texas struck down the final rule in a similar fashion. When Mr. Trump was elected, the DOL dropped the appeal of the 2016 decision. So a little pattern there. Looks like the standard of earning of at least $35,568 a year to be exempt may be in place for a while then. This is especially important controlling inflation at this time.
Objection, Your Honor.
And we welcome a high visibility podcaster and a published author, Joseph M. Leonard. Mr. Leonard is also known as Joe Leonard Detroit. He is an author, blogger, cancer survivor, constitutionalist, former IT professional, podcaster, political activist, social media influencer, and speaker. He is also the author of Terror Strikes, Coming Soon to a City Near You, a #1 Amazon bestseller, and How to Write a Book and Get It Published. He is the host of the Constitutionalist Politics podcast. He describes himself as born of the 1960s, very much a person of the 1980s. We welcome Joseph M. Leonard for his first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you, David. And if we're relying on Joseph M. Leonard to save America, we're all in trouble.
Well, you and I have talked before, so I know you've got a lot of good ideas. As you know, we follow a 3-question format. And the first question, you make a point of saying you are a lifelong resident of Wyandotte, Michigan, adding by choice. Tell us a little bit about that. I've just caught my attention.
Yeah, my way of starting off kind of the bio aspect. And to be clear, yes, I am Joseph M. Leonard. It looks like French. It's not Leonard. It's actually Polish. It was probably Leonard Waskowicz at some point, but it's Leonard without an O. And I got to throw that middle initial in there because there is an author out of South Carolina, Joseph Leonard. So I've got to make sure I make that spelling distinction and name distinction. But yeah, born and raised in Southeast Michigan, a southern suburb of Detroit. I'm not fond of the winters, of course, but 4 seasons are nice, and by choice, I pretty much choose to stay here, family, friends, and all that. Yeah, I love the Vegas area. I'd love to move to Vegas, but no, by choice, I do stay in the southeastern Michigan area. I was born one city over, basically spent 99.99999% of my life in Wyandotte, and yeah, I'm happy with that. I like our city. It's nice.
Well, we used to have an acronym, BMOC, Big Man on Campus. And I'm guessing that when you're in a smaller town, in contrast to where I am in Houston, Texas, which is a area of about 4 million people, give or take 500,000 or so, it's a lot harder to be the BMOC, right?
Hey, that's true. You're like, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond or just one of the minnows in the big lake, right?
Absolutely. Switching to a little bit more serious topic, your book, Constitutionalist Politics, and you have it trademarked. Tell our audience about this unique trademark word and the point of your podcast.
Yeah, I felt called to do more than I've been doing. And I thought, well, I could start a low-key, kind of low-cost podcast, as is my 4th international book is called Podcasting Quick Start Guide. So I could teach you how to do it too. Right? I could teach, by you, I mean anyone out there. You could start a low-key, low-cost, low-scale kind of podcast and see what happens and go with it. I'm in my 2nd season now, but I felt called to do more than what I was. I'm older now. I have health issues, older, slower, poorer. So I have to do more from my couch these days than as a political activist my whole life could do before, driving a lot of places, going a lot of places, speaking a lot of places. So now I sit my butt on my couch and reach people through the internet. But conservative, whether people either really gravitate or want to run from that word. So I thought I need a new approach. Christitutionalist, Christian-based U.S. constitutionalism, right? Reach some of those who may be a little left of center Christians, but we can still talk with one another, even though I am a right of center Christian, together based in the root of the Bible, things that we could come together and agree on. And that's the point and the meaning of my show. Like, it's not, I was born and raised Catholic, right? My grandfather was Lutheran, became Catholic to marry my grandmother on my mother's side, Josephine. But I like to say it's not a Catholic show. It's not a Lutheran show, not a Methodist show, a Baptist show, a yada, yada, yada show. It's Christian overall umbrella, because there are, I lost track of the number of different flavors of Bible there are out there. Jesus didn't do that. God didn't command it. We as humans did that and screwed things up in the process. So what can all of these 100 different version Bible readers come together and agree on are what Jesus said, and let's focus on those things and apply them to our modern politics.
Fascinating, and I certainly understand that. And by the way, if you swing through Houston, I think you'll pick up another 40 or 50 different religions. I have seen some that pop up and they'll have a sign, and of course, some of them are pretty big. We're home to some pretty large operations here. Thousands of people show up every weekend to hang out with some of these cats.
Yeah, I thought I saw something the other day on Google about the David Schein cult.
Well, they haven't checked in with me yet. As long as there's a royalty associated with it, I'll be glad to discuss it with them.
I go into that on my show, and then my Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You book.
And that is our next question so your current book out is called Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You. That's actually the whole title. It's not Terror Strikes. And by the way, the book's coming soon. So how'd you come up with that title, and what is the book about? Why should our audience read it?
Well, as I was going to say, even in a book about terrorism, although I'll go into it's not entirely really about terrorism, much more than that, there's a comic relief chapter, right? We have got to keep our sense of humor. And though, yes, it's Terror Strikes, there's a bazillion books called Terror Strikes. The subtitle makes all the difference. Coming soon to a city near you. And yes, I mean that. Terrorism isn't just a New York 9/11 thing. It can happen anytime, any place. Like LAX was shut down by a terror attack on an electrical grid substation. Shut down LAX for 3 days. There was a train derailed between St. Louis and Chicago. Terrorism. It can happen anytime, any place. But I'm not trying to sell you on fear porn. I just want you awake and alert, not paranoid, right? But I like to say about the book, yes, about terrorism, but not book about death, but life and living. Life over death, hope over fear, faith over despair, love over hate, good over evil, individualism over collectivism, political aspect of the book, freedom over tyranny, family and friends. So it's way more than terrorism. And if you like baseball, there's some baseball in there too. Wink, wink, nod, nod. So, the terrorism is the thread that ties the historical fiction, #1 Amazon bestseller, together. I also call it faction. Historical fiction's the legal proper literature term, but I like to make up my own terms. I call it faction, part fact, part fiction.
It sounds fascinating. Now, is this set? Is this been triggered because you released it, I think, in 2022? Is this based on a lot of the reports that we're hearing? It seems over the last 2 years, which has been since your book was written, talking about all of the gotaways at the southern border and some at the northern border, that there's, Christopher Wray, the current FBI director, is saying we're in more danger now than we were when 9/11 happened.
Hence, coming soon to a city near you. It may not make Newsmax, OAN, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, because it's a localized event and it doesn't get the national news. That doesn't mean terrorism hasn't happened. And it may have happened in your backyard, just everybody else hasn't heard of it. And indeed, yes. And in the book, I go into the very distinction between legal immigration and illegal immigration, the dangers of the latter, and we are a nation of the former.
Now, did you think a lot about the title of your book and the content of your book when the CrowdStrike problem happened about a week ago, and all those places in Europe and the airlines were fouled up, and all sorts of weird things happened? And you notice how quickly they rushed out there and said, "Oh, it's not a terrorist attack. It's not a service denial attack. We just fouled up." And I don't know about you, but I'm still having trouble buying that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of these things are underlying terrorist attacks, but indeed, they won't own up and admit to it. It's, just human error or this or that or the other. It's like the LAX outage that I spoke of. 3 days it was out. They still will not, to this day, talk about it again because it was a substation attack. It was a not a forewarning, but kind of a I'm having a mental block here, but a minor excursion, a test. If we do this, can we get away with it? And then, well, that worked. Now, how do we upscale that? Minor things can lead to bigger things if we don't deal in the reality of what that actually was.
Well, I think, and certainly following on that point, the World Trade Center was attacked before, and and the cats that were involved in that, it really didn't seem that anybody got that excited about it. But sadly, I think it was about 8 years later when 9/11 happened, and people found out that you can go after the same building twice.
Yeah, they thought they could topple the World Trade Center with a U-Haul bomb, but the place they misplaced where they put the U-Haul truck bomb, and it didn't fully explode to the degree they thought it would. They thought they could undermine the stability from below. And since that didn't work, they thought, okay, well, let's attack it from above. So, right, it can happen the same place twice, or it may never happen the same place twice ever. You don't know. But the point being, 9/11 was a big deal, a big ordeal. And terrorists, despite wanting to claim they're martyrs for God, do want to actually live. They find suckers to suicide themselves by plane into the Trade Center, but the plotters live. You notice that? They want to live. And since we went in full force into Afghanistan, they think, oh, well, wait a minute. We don't want to do anything that scale again and poke the eye of the beast and get that response, because we'll be killed then, right? So a death by 1,000 cuts, right? You poke here, poke there, poke, 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 poke. The tiger might not strike full force. Because again, despite all their rhetoric about, soldiers for Allah and willing to martyr themselves, no, they want to live too. They want us to die. They want to live.
And Joe, you may have missed it in the very recent news, but the 3 folks that they found that been under arrest for a while, who reportedly were the mastermind of 9/11, have just agreed to stay at be house guests at Gitmo for the rest of their lives. I'm disappointed in that. I think the death penalty would have made more sense. Especially one of the concerns I have is when they hold these terrorists like this, it gives the other terrorists who are their buddies and their fans an incentive to create some type of a ransom thing where they say, oh, well, we've caught this U.S. senator wandering around the world and we'll trade him for the big mastermind and stuff like that. So right. I'm not impressed with the fact that they made a settlement. And but that I don't know if you saw that, but it literally just came in today.
I
announced
saw
by the Biden administration, and there's just no justice.
Does it surprise anyone? An administration that is weak on criminals in our own land is also weak on terrorists. An administration, Biden, who was VP during Obama, as I call him, and the Iran deal, sending money, supporting terrorists. Biden, who also lifted all the sanctions, put a couple on here and there to pretend he's tough, but he made Iran rich. What's going on in Israel now and in the Middle East would not have happened if not for Biden lifting 90% of all the sanctions. So they are awash in oil money again. They were almost dirt poor, bankrupt, couldn't fund the terrorism, but now they're awash in oil cash again, and they're able to fund these proxy terrorist groups. So a lot of this wouldn't be happening. So they're willing, in my mind, openly, my opinion, aiding and abetting the enemy, Iran, the biggest state sponsor of terrorism on the entire planet. So of course, it's not a surprise they make a deal with terrorists.
Absolutely. Well, Joseph M. Leonard, it's been a great pleasure to visit with you again. As some of our audience know, I was the guest on your show, and we could do this for a whole hour or two, but what my producer tells me is if we keep it short, people are more likely to listen to the whole thing. But tell our audience how they can get some more information about you.
Yeah, well, first, now this may air soon, and hopefully it'll air some other time on a replay at some point. So the show with you on Constitutionalist Politics right now is penciled in for the last Wednesday of August 2024. So it will air then, and hopefully people will hear it when it airs, or if this airs again after that, they'll find the backdated episode. But to find me, you could see, if you see this on video, terrorstrikes.info at the top of my screen. That's the book-related site. I also have the author site, josephmleonard.us. Again, it looks like Leonard. It's actually Polish. It's Leonard without an O, josephmleonard.us. And for those who care, I'm part Italian and German on my mother's side too, but majority Polish. And please go ahead, make Polak jokes. I'm more than happy with them because, if we can't laugh at ourselves, we have no business laughing at others. And
I totally agree. I think that's too much. Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you next week.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.